Hello again, and welcome to this new session of this technical English workshop. I hope you have had a nice week. For this second encounter, we're going to try and we're going to deal with some interesting topics as we did in the first session. One more time, let's remember that this is taken into account in the framework of our activities in the Básica Education program. And today we're going to have another session, and this time the topics to be dealt with are going to be auxiliary verbs, are going to be determiners, and we're also going to work on demonstrative pronouns. Also, we're going to talk about relative terms for you to express and carry out some important connections in sentences, among sentences, and within the same sentence too. Okay, the first topic we're going to begin with is going to be auxiliary verbs. The auxiliary verbs, okay, first let's take into account what are auxiliary verbs. Auxiliary verbs constitute a common occurrence in some languages, especially English. And you will see that English is the language that deals with auxiliary verbs in a very high degree. But we can find, for example, that in Spanish, in German, in French, etc., we also carry out the usage of auxiliary verbs, especially taking into account that some sentences will need it. And a perfect equivalence is going to be established between a language and another one in terms of the usage of auxiliary verbs. In English, they are going to have a common occurrence in some tenses more than others, and we will see that in a minute when the explanation is well displayed. Okay, first, one more time, we're going to deal with auxiliary verbs. What is an auxiliary verb? Well, an auxiliary verb is a verb that is going to facilitate the conjugation of main verbs in the sentence. We are going to need auxiliary verbs in some tenses, in some others, according to what I said, you will see not much difference because with respect to our language, and we always have the trend to compare things with respect to our Spanish, we will see that auxiliary verbs are used in our language too. But let's see how they work in English. Okay, take into account first that there are forms that are non-conjugated forms, non-conjugated verb forms in English. Okay, the first one is the infinitive, to go, for example. Okay, the second one is the gerund. Okay, we can also call the gerund present participle and the past participle. Gone. To go, going, and gone. This is the past participle. These are the non-conjugated forms. And when we are going to use verbs, especially some verbs and verb tenses requiring those non-conjugated forms, we are going to have and we're going to appreciate much more the need for using auxiliary verbs. Okay, the first one we're going to deal with today is to be, the most representative one and the most common one too. Okay, so to be. How does to be work in terms of an auxiliary verb? So let's have a look at it. When you say, for example, I am listening to music, let's pay attention to one detail I would like you to keep in mind for you to appreciate more how they work and what is the real function they have. This verb over here doesn't have and doesn't constitute the verb that has the meaning in the sentence. There is a verb that has the meaning itself, which is going to be listening. Although it is a non-conjugated form, listening is the verb that attaches meaning and a special significance and meaning to the sentence, right? Listening. I am listening. If you say, for example, I am, and nothing complements the use of that auxiliary verb, actually no meaning and no clear understanding is going to emerge. So that is why this is the verb that has the meaning in the sentence, and this is just a verb that facilitates the conjugation of such a verb. Okay? I am listening to music. Well, of course, the corresponding negative forms are going to include the auxiliary verb in that tense. You already know what the name of that tense is, which is present continuous. So we say, for example, I'm not listening to the news, right? I'm not listening to the news. If you are going to ask a question, you will see the presence and the importance of the auxiliary verb one more time. Okay, look at this. Are you studying English? This is the auxiliary verb. Now, in that tense, we find the presence of the auxiliary verb all the time, whatever the sentence is. To be is going to be essential too when we are conjugating the future. When we talk about the future, yeah, we're going to. That's another situation and another case in which you will see an auxiliary verb, or see to be as an auxiliary verb. For example, she is going to travel tomorrow. Okay, look at this. To be now is facilitating the conjugation of going to travel. Well, actually travel, but remember all of this is going to be a compound structure. And the verb, which is really conjugated, which is to be, is facilitating the conjugation of all that structure. Going to travel. She is what? She is going to travel tomorrow. In the same way, we can appreciate the existence of a negative form of a question too. You already know how to ask those questions. I'm not going to go into depth with respect to that structure. I'm only illustrating how it works and how it is considered as an auxiliary verb. Okay? Well, let's continue with another one. Do. Okay, do is another auxiliary verb. Of course, do, which is sometimes the main verb to, whose translation into our Spanish is hacer, won't appear in affirmative sentences as an auxiliary form. Why? Because remember, we only need to conjugate the main verb, and that is going to give the meaning in the sentence. So when you say, for example, I'm going to do it here, I teach English. No existence of an auxiliary verb is necessary. No presence of it is necessary because simple present only gives and presents the main verb immediately. But if that conjugation is negative, or if you have the need to ask a question, you will see the need to use, or the need for using an auxiliary verb too. The one that is do. Let's see examples. They do not, and remember this commonly becomes more, and in a more comfortable way becomes a contraction. You say they don't teach German. Look, they don't teach German. We find over here something I would like you to pay attention to. And this establishes a difference with respect to the first auxiliary term we were referring to. The fact that this term doesn't attach any meaning in the sentence. In terms of vocabulary and in terms of a translation, if there is a need to translate these sentences or this sentence, into Spanish, you will see that this doesn't represent and attach any meaning because it doesn't contain any meaning itself. The meaning is here. Term by term, you can ask with respect to our language, why the need to use this? Because we have ellos no enseñan alemán. So teacher, some people will ask, what is the need to use do in that regard? Well, actually, it is something that English determines, and that's it. English, in that case, needs auxiliary verbs in this kind of conjugation, right? They don't teach German. And if there is the need to ask a question, okay, you will see the auxiliary verb one more time. This is like this. Do they live in Germany? Look at this, right? Do they live in Germany? We will find that do doesn't attach any meaning. One more time, right? Do doesn't mean anything. Ellos viven en Alemania. Or in that case, do is essentially necessary only in terms of accomplishing the grammar patterns and the grammar rules that English has, right? So we find an example on the use of do in that regard. Well, these two auxiliary forms have the corresponding equivalences in the past. We say something like this, for example. She was playing tennis. Okay, she was playing tennis, right? And do will have the corresponding equivalent into the past too, and especially one more time when referring to negative sentences and questions, and we will say, they did not, which one more time becomes a contraction in a more comfortable form, and we say, for example, didn't. They didn't travel to England. Now, this is going to give a connotation in past, but the meaning itself is in travel. They didn't travel to England. The question is this way. Did they eat pizza last night? Okay, look at this. Did they eat pizza last night? Now we find examples on the use of to be, both in present and past, and do, both in present and past, which is did, for, in the case of do, negative sentences and questions, and in the case of did, the same situation. Okay, well, these are the ones related to simple present and past. And actually, to be, in terms of the usage that it has, so it's going to correspond to the tense that corresponds to present continuous and past continuous. So those are the tenses in English that will require the use of to be as an auxiliary form. And now we will continue with other auxiliary verbs. I'm going to take this off. Okay, let's go, for example, to have. Have, another very common auxiliary verb. The tense it is going to be used in is present perfect. You know present perfect, right? Okay, so let's see, for example, I have eaten sushi 3 times in my whole lifetime. Well, let me make a little adjustment over there so she doesn't have to be in capital letter. Okay? So, sushi 3 times in my life, in my whole lifetime. I have eaten sushi 3 times in my whole lifetime. I have. It doesn't have any meaning in the sentence. That has nothing to do with tener, as we normally know the use of that verb. For example, when we say, I have a car, I have a travel agency, I have a company, etc. Okay, this is for you to facilitate the conjugation of verbs, which are in past participle in this case, okay? Gone, eaten, both of them are past participles, and this is the way it works. You already know what the usage is with respect to negative sentences and questions, okay? But I'm going to give an example anyway. We say, I have, look at this. I'm going to establish the negation over here. Or let me do it better this way, right? Let's make an adjustment. So, I haven't eaten lobster. I haven't eaten lobster. This is the way we can see have working as an auxiliary form, in a negative sentence. And now, in terms of questions, we will say, have you ever seen an accident? Well, have you ever seen an accident? Now, in questions, it has nothing to do with tener again. It is to facilitate the conjugation of the whole idea related to the fact of seeing an accident. Okay, this is in present perfect. And the same verb has the equivalence in past. And remember, the tense that will have that conjugation in past is past perfect. And then we can see something like this. Look. Well, this is the corresponding equivalence in past. And we will say, I had, let me do it this way better. I had seen Jessica when you called me. This is the use of past perfect combined with simple past. I didn't write I had. Excuse me one more time. I'm really sorry. I had seen Jessica, now it is. I had seen Jessica when you called me. So it means that before this action took place, another action had taken place in the past. I had seen Jessica when you called me. Remember that we can also give another order to that sentence and the meaning is going to be kept. So we can say, when you called me, comma, I had seen Jessica. Right. Remember, this tense, according to what you know and what I said a few minutes ago, is called past perfect. It's the same verb. The thing is that this is in present and this is in past. And the tenses are different too. Present perfect and past perfect. Okay, I'm not going to give an example. You already know that. But remember, this conjugation can also be in a negative form and it can also be in questions. It can also take place in the context of asking questions in English, okay? But this is mainly and essentially the order. I had seen Jessica when you called me, or when you called me, I had seen Jessica. An action in the past happening before another action in the past, okay? This is the case of auxiliary verbs. Now we are going to study another one, which is will, in order for you to indicate future. Will for you to indicate future, right? Okay, You say, for example, my sister will apply for a scholarship in Italy. Okay? My sister will apply for the scholarship in Italy. In terms of meaning, one more time, we face the situation that this doesn't make any contribution. The only contribution it makes is in terms of function, not in terms of meaning, only in terms of function. The function is referring to future. My sister will apply for the scholarship in Italy. Okay? Then, the conjugation in negative form is this way. She will not, and remember, this more commonly becomes a contraction, and we will say won't. She won't apply for the job in Medellin. Let's suppose that we already have a clear reference on what job we are talking about, and we say she will not apply for the job in Medellin. She will not, but we say she won't. And that contraction is more commonly exerted. Okay? And for you to ask a question, let me ask the question here. We will say, will she travel to Rome in November? And this is the way it works in terms of asking a question, right? Will she travel to Rome in November? Will, again. Well, this is an example on how auxiliary verbs work. There are some others. For example, would and the modal verbs can also be considered auxiliary forms, but we are not going to dedicate a special time to modal verbs in this session. We'll do that in an upcoming session. Okay, I don't know if you have any question. Remember to be attentive, to watch the video once and twice and all the times that are necessary, and you will ask the corresponding questions in the exchange of ideas we'll have in our encounter, the one that will take place in our class, right? Thank you so much for your attention. Okay, see you in the next topic.